This is slide number 6, U.S. growth and security. And I tell you now, this is probably going to be the longest one of the unit. So, deal with it. Because I like talking about this stuff. And there's a lot of material here that we need to cover. So, let's start by talking about the Sun Belt. There is a shift in population in the 1950s as people start to leave the frozen north here and head to the south and southwest. If you look at sort of a kind of a smiley face, the smile and a smiley face, if you start in kind of Virginia, North Carolina area of the East Coast and curve down across the south and then back up into, kind of through Florida, Louisiana, through Texas, and then curve back up like a smiley face, you get the Sun Belt. And people start moving there. Growth nearly doubled what it was in the north there. They went looking for jobs, better weather, lower taxes, but really one new invention made this all possible, and that's the air conditioner. People could live comfortably in the south and the southwest thanks to the development of the air conditioner. So if you can live in nice weather comfortably, why not? And a lot of people did. Okay? And where they were living in the south and the southwest was the suburbs. One of my favorite things to talk about during the 50s here is the growth of the suburbs. And we're going to talk some more about the problems with it in class, and specifically Louisville. But basically there's good and bad to it. But this is the time when suburbs started to develop. And for one big reason, the GI Bill. Veterans, all these soldiers coming home from the war and from serving after the war, got very cheap home loans to be able to build new houses. And if you could have a house, basically as cheaply as you could have an apartment, why not have a house, right? There's good and there's bad. Home ownership goes up. Let's talk about the good first. Home ownership goes up. And if more people own homes, that creates lots of jobs for people building them and furnishing them. So home ownership going up is a good thing. The whole issue of kind of family values goes up because mom is able to stay home and raise big families of children in the suburbs. And when mom spends time in the suburbs, raising her children, her family, she's there with them and has time to teach them of, honesty and doing things the right way and taking care of others, things like that. Just good, honest family values. Those go up as mom is around more. Okay? Car sales go up because you live downtown. You take the bus everywhere. You take the subway everywhere. You don't have far to go downtown. Everything's close together. Out in the suburb, everything is spread out, and you need a car. And when car sales go up, that creates lots of jobs. It is a boom for the economy. The 50s is the car culture because everybody owns cars. Okay? Lots of classic cars come out of the 50s. And a lot of that is because people need cars. They live in the suburbs. Okay? The realization of the American dream increases. The American dream is, and probably always will be, a home and a family. Now, most of you, I don't want to say all, but most of you listening to this, probably someday want to have a family of your own and own your own home. I'd be willing to bet. Not all of you, but most of you. That's the American dream. It always has been, to do better than your parents did. And for the first time in America here, a whole generation basically did better than their parents did because they were able to own homes. And they can have their family, the little white picket fence, kids playing in the yard with the puppy and all that. So the American dream is realized by a lot of people. And crime rates are lower in the suburbs than they are in the urban areas, than the downtown areas. So lots of good things about the suburbs. It's not all good, though. There are problems, too. So let's talk about a couple of the problems. Pollution goes up. in the 50s here, thanks to the development of the suburbs, because more people are driving everywhere. More factories are built. People are getting the jobs. So more factories, bigger factories get built, and they're pumping out more and more pollution. All those new factories that are getting built, they're getting built in the suburbs. Because, if you've got a factory downtown and you want to expand your factory, you're locked. You can't build out. There's buildings all around you. The only way to go is up, and that's very expensive. So companies would buy cheap land out in the suburbs and build these huge, sprawling factories. Here in Louisville, think Ford, both Ford plants, the GE plant, UPS. These are all their factories, their warehouses. They're all out in the suburbs. And all those factories that are getting built, all the cars that people are driving around are pumping all kind of pollution in the air. So that's a problem. Public transit starts to fall apart. Because when you go to suburbs, nobody's taking buses. Nobody's taking subways anymore. When you lived downtown, that's how you got around. You took public transportation. In the suburbs, nobody uses it. So public transportation systems broke down, and they're going to be very expensive to repair and to rebuild. And really the biggest problem of the suburbs is that while the economy in the suburbs boomed, the economy in the urban areas crashed. Businesses left downtown areas. If people aren't living in downtown areas, there's no need for a business to be in the downtown area. Nobody's going to move to the suburb and then go back downtown to shop. They're going to shop in new shopping malls in the suburbs. Shopping malls are a development of the 1950s. We don't see them before the 50s because you don't need to. Everything's downtown. Out in the suburbs, we need malls to hold lots of stores in one place. So everybody shops in the suburbs, and when they do, the urban economy crumbles. Factories leave the downtown areas. Stores and shops leave the downtown areas when people leave the downtown areas. So the development of the suburbs is a huge effect, has a huge effect on this country. A lot of it's good, but not all of it. There are problems. Okay? One of the problems that you see on the slide here is something called white flight, because the suburbs typically were segregated. Blacks, in most cases, did not have the money to buy land to build a house in the suburbs. And if they did have the money, they had to find a white builder willing to build them a house. And that was not always easy. So typically the suburbs were segregated. Whites fled the downtown area, and when the urban economy crashed, the black population was left to suffer. Blacks ended up in inner city housing projects while whites lived in nice suburban houses. It's called white flight, as the white population leaves in huge numbers the downtown areas to head out to the suburbs. Now, let's talk about the suburbs themselves. Okay? And to start with, we have to talk about the first suburb. It's called Levittown. It's named after the guy who invented it, that built the first suburb, a man named William Levitt, Levitt, William Levitt, and he names it after himself. So I guess if you invent something and build the first one, you can name it whatever you want. So he named it after himself, Levittown. It was in just outside of, which is what a suburb is, outside the main city, outside of New York. It was in a Long Island suburb. And Levitt is a former military man, and he takes the efficiency he learned in the military, building things in the military, and he applies it to building houses. Levittown houses all looked alike. They're sometimes called cookie cutter houses because they all looked alike. They were called prefab, F-A-B, meaning prefabricated or pre-built. Levitt could build a house. He had broken it down to, he could build a house in 27 steps. He takes his military efficiency and applies it to building houses. 27 steps. So basically, he would build all the parts in factories. So he would have, the end, the left side, the right side, the front, the back, the roof frame, everything. He would have it in pieces ship it all to the building site, and then like a big puzzle, he would assemble it. He'd put all the pieces together, and suddenly you have a house. Right? All the lumber was pre-cut, all the pipes were pre-cut, holes were pre-drilled. Literally, you just brought the pieces to the building site, and suddenly you had a house. Right? Now, all of them look alike. You see here on the screen here, sorry, went blank there, up in the top right corner here, postcard, this is 1957. Now that's almost 10 years after Levitt starts. By then you could have 1, 2, 3, 4. You could choose from a whole 4 different houses if you wanted. But that's the thing about the suburbs. If you want a cheap, quick house, this is how they have to be built. And this is the house that new people, new veterans could afford with a GI Bill loan. So Levittown started popping up all over the country, outside of every major city. And the reason that we need these houses is because families are getting big. It's because of the baby boom. Okay? From 1945 to 1960, really, is the baby boom. 45 to 60. It's the end of World War II, and really till about the end of the 1950s. In the 60s, we'll talk about why birth rates start declining. But the baby boom, this is the largest generation. More babies are born during this time than any other time. Okay? It hits its peak in 1957. 57 was the height of the baby boom. One baby was born every 7 seconds in the United States. One baby born every 7 seconds. That's amazing to me. And everybody thinks that the baby boom begins when all the soldiers come home from World War II and they've been gone so long and they're so happy to see their sweethearts that they all have welcome back sex. Well, while that did happen, and lots of babies are born 9 months after that, it really begins at the beginning of World War II, when the United States got into the war and soldiers got drafted and went off to the war. They would go to their sweethearts and say, "Dear, I'm off to war tomorrow. I may not return again. Let's share one more night together." And everybody had going away sex. So we see a lot of babies born during the war, before soldiers leave. 9 months later, Junior shows up. But really, in big numbers, starts when they get home. So anyway, these soldiers, these veterans are having big families. You can't have a big family in a little 2-bedroom apartment, even a 1-bedroom apartment in most cases. So you need a house. So the suburbs get built. Okay? Anyway, good stuff. We'll talk some more about the suburbs in class, specifically Louisville. Okay? The 1952 election, as we often say, in the middle of this, politics happens. Yes, it does. Harry Truman has served out his terms, so we're going to see some new candidates here. Right? In 1952, the Democrats are going to nominate Illinois governor, a man named Adlai Stevenson. Interesting name, Adlai, A-D-L-A-I. You don't have to know first names, as you know by now. But Stevenson, S-T-E-V-E-N-S-O-N. Adlai Stevenson. Governor of Illinois would be the Democratic nominee, and the Republicans are going to nominate World War II hero General Dwight Eisenhower, who has retired from the military. Extremely popular. So they go with, what always works. Let's pick a war hero. In fact, when they go talk to him, nobody's even quite sure if he's a Republican or not. And he's like, sure, I'll be a Republican, why not? He's very unpolitical. He was known as the unpolitical president. So if Eisenhower, whose nickname is Ike, there you see, I like Ike, very famous campaign slogan there, I like Ike. If Eisenhower is the unpolitical one, the political one is his vice presidential candidate, a young senator from California named Richard Nixon. Very famous name in American politics in the future, not so much now. But Richard Nixon would be Eisenhower's running mate, his vice presidential candidate. There you see the campaign poster. Let's clean house with Ike and Dick. Great poster. But anyway, Richard Nixon will make a name for himself, and one he doesn't want to make during this campaign because he gets in trouble. Nixon gets accused of accepting illegal campaign donations. Right? And he could single-handedly kind of sink Eisenhower's campaign here. But he goes on TV and he gives a very famous speech called the Checkers speech. Nixon goes on TV. And remember, he's accused of accepting illegal campaign donations. So he goes on TV and he says, ladies and gentlemen, I've been accused of doing a horrible thing here, and I would never do anything to destroy the chances of Dwight Eisenhower becoming our president. So let me tell you what happened. And he goes on and on and on. And he gets to this story. And he says, a man in Texas or somewhere, I think it was Texas, heard me talking on TV about how my little girls wanted a puppy, and that fella sent us a puppy. It was a little black and white dog, so the girls named him Checkers. And you can say what you want about accepting things, but they love that little dog, and we're going to keep him. And they put him on TV. They put the little girls and the puppy and pictures of him, and everybody goes, oh, isn't he cute? Look at the little puppy and the little girls. And they completely forget about what he's been accused of. He completely spins it. It's a brilliant move. He uses television. This is the first campaign that really will use television. And Nixon is an expert at it. He is a professional. And everybody completely forgets he's been accused of breaking the law, and they like the little puppy and they like the girls, and that's it. Okay? Eisenhower will win an easy election, so the Republicans are back in power. Okay? Now, one of the things the Republicans learned during this time was that they can use television and they can use this Cold War that's going on to their advantage. And that brings us to the Red Scare. Okay? The Reds are the communists because the Soviet flag is red, right? So commies, as they're called, are known as Reds. And everybody's scared of communists, right? We're in a Cold War with them. They're going to bomb us and everything else. So the Republicans will use, down here in the lower right corner, this is a Wisconsin senator named Eugene McCarthy. And they're going to use something called McCarthyism. Okay? McCarthy is going to go on TV and he's going to go in front of Congress and accuse the State Department, the Secretary of State, he's going to accuse him of knowingly employing 205 communists in the State Department. He's employing communists in the United States government. And McCarthy will will head up a government committee known as HUAC, H-U-A-C, HUAC. It stands for House Un-American Activities Committee. The House Un-American Activities Committee. So they're going to investigate people that they suspect of doing un-American things, like being communists. Okay? And McCarthy will publicly accuse people of being communist sympathizers. And in the middle of the Cold War, there is nothing worse you can accuse somebody of than being a communist sympathizer. Now, know that he has absolutely no proof on anybody, but all he has to do is go on TV and say your name and communist in the same sentence, and your reputation is ruined. Now, McCarthy is a Republican senator, so guess which party everybody he accuses of being a communist belongs to? That's right, Democrats. Okay? And McCarthy will help Eisenhower win the 1952 election. He will discredit every Democrat around till nobody's voting for Democrats. McCarthy will ruin people's lives and their reputation. Okay? So Eisenhower wins, the Republicans go to McCarthy and say, great job, now shut up. But he won't. He won't stop. He keeps going on and on and on because he loves the spotlight. He loves the attention he's getting. Eventually, he starts naming more and more and more people. Eventually, he gets to the point where he names high-ranking military officials of actually being communists. It's at that point that the Republicans can't even support him. Okay? And they say, look, dude, we told you, shut up. Now you didn't shut up, and we can't back you. So he will lose his next re-election campaign and basically drink himself to death, a broken man. McCarthy used to brag of drinking a fifth of whiskey a day. That's a lot of whiskey, apparently. And dies of liver failure. He drinks himself to death, a broken man. Could have been the star of the party, but he can't stop himself. He craves the attention. Okay? Now, one of the fallouts, no pun intended here, of the Cold War is the fact that everybody is terrified that the Soviets are going to hit us at any moment with atomic bombs. So families start building fallout shelters or bomb shelters in their backyards. This was a huge business. Companies made a fortune selling fallout shelters, installing fallout shelters in people's backyards. Because when the air raid sirens would go off, you headed to your bomb shelter where you were going to ride out the attack and all of that. And it was a legitimate fear. The Soviet Union did have missiles that could reach parts of the United States. So it's a very legitimate fear. We have atomic weapons pointed at them. They've got them pointed at us. And nobody was quite sure when, World War III was going to begin. So what we were told to do, schools had, like we have fire drills or tornado drills, they had bomb drills. Sirens would go off, and you had to assume the position in the hallway or under a desk or under a table, wherever you were. You were told to duck and cover. Okay? There was a great cartoon made that I'm going to show you all in class, starring this little guy right here, Bert the Turtle. There's Bert with his little air defense helmet on. And we're going to watch a video. Great video. We'll talk more about it in class. But students were taught to duck and cover to survive these atomic bombs. Okay? Now, last thing, more of the Cold War here. Story about the Rosenbergs. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. That's these guys here. This is a husband and a wife. There's Ethel, and there's Julius. Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. They were atomic scientists, both of them. But they were also Soviet spies. They were discovered to be selling atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. They were arrested, put on trial, found guilty. This time, I know we've talked about a lot of mistrials here, or miscarriages of justice. This time they were guilty. Tons of evidence against them. They were found guilty and put to death. They were executed, both of them, in, I think it's 1951, making them the only people in American history to be executed in peacetime for spying. We've put spies to death before, but we've always been at war. We weren't at war here. So Ethel and Julius Rosenberg become casualties of the Cold War. Okay? So, anyway, I know that took a while, but like I said, this is good stuff, guys. You gotta like this. Oh, so anyway, thank you, and till I see you again in the next slide.